Greetings, seekers. This is Black Pope Vice. I have hot new content for you. A more concise lecture on who we are, what we are. Some backstory. I'm very comfy now, laying down like a Roman aristocrat, eating a meal, lecturing about some metaphysics. Now, let's begin with some backstory. When I first began this lecture concept of who we are, what we are, I had it being a 6-part series, and I'm concising it to one video because it doesn't need to be in separate pieces. I was, not using a script. But also, when I started this whole lecture concept, I made it democratic and asked what people wanted. I set up the videos based on the order of how I felt the topic should be in a teleological order. Now I'm redoing them because I feel you need to understand where you are now in Midgard, which is another way of describing nowness, as in your material reality that you're experiencing. Just fixing my skeleton nose. You didn't see that. That doesn't tickle me so much. Not that I tickled. This material reality is distinct from inner traveling, which seemed to be very common in shamanic tradition as recently as the 60s, where one Western writer on Shintoism is marking the decline of this kind of astral travel among Shinto priests. People voted for theories over rituals, which made me upset, but I figured that half my audience could already add up to your manifestation. For those who don't know, that is performing magic outside of a ceremonial state, and just want refinement in operating and navigating through this matrix. Fair. Why change how you perform magic if it works? Why not just add more data? I support that. I don't want to upset your magic if it's working for you. However, this lecture may not be to your benefit if you kind of operate that way. One cannot undo the truth once you know it. If you're interested in magic for the first time, this and my commentary on Christ will not cause operational problems. Just kind of bringing this up now. Because, I don't know. Some people are just like that. They just kind of want to, I don't know. Anyway, back to the essay. Who we are, what we are. As I said earlier, several part lecture and one part. This lecture itself will contain aspects of the macro and microcosm implications, how this manifests in societal elements. Yes, we are supposed to live in a society. Only some of the gods in Gaiden live with the beasts in the wilderness. Just some of them, not all. Some of them. This lecture also includes how our occupiers behave and how to defend oneself against this, and if interested, how to act in reasonable self-defense. In the big picture, when we talk about the physics of other rather than ourselves, I like to cite two individuals for the exploration and articulation, Carl Jung and Alan Watts, respectively, of this. Mythopoetic analysis is reading omens within your environment that relate to your inner states and the process of relating and resolving said inner states. Why does this happen? Because the idea of self and other Being separate is an illusion. A necessary one. Ultimately makes things more interesting. Some of these things, it just be like that. And you just kind of be like, well, that makes sense, guy I'm watching. It just makes things more interesting. Is the answer to a lot of the things in metaphysics. Why does God grant our wishes? Because it makes things more interesting. This illusion makes it more enjoyable to experience being. Now, Alan Watts says LSD causes one to experience a spectrum of self and other by experiencing polarity. I say getting real LSD is hard these days. Other hallucinogenics might accomplish this, depending on where that trip takes you. I don't think I've ever done hallucinogenics that made me experience the polarity spectrum of self and other. I have to really think about that, but the way he describes it, I'm just like, no, I don't think I've ever experienced that high. I've thought about it on cannabis. Like I've gotten myself into that state because I've had the luxury during that time, but not. I've been more in practical mode on hard hallucinogenics, if you can believe such a thing. Okay. And before I go further into this lecture, I want to tell you about how I'm going to talk about the facts. When I'm talking about mainstream science or the conclusions of mainstream science, I will say this. When I'm talking about something I figured out, because my sister and I lived together for a couple months back in 2018, and we had a mental breakdown figuring out a lot of stuff, I'm going to talk about that. I had a piece I'm ruining because I don't even want to talk about. I mentioned someone, a celebritard I hate a lot, and honestly I don't even want to give power to him. I want to just throw it out there and just crush him. Symbolic, as above, so below magic. But he's bad. There's a lot of celebrities out there, Hollywood, who are still involved in Hollywood, all evil. You should be completely skeptical of all celebrities from Hollywood. If you're still involved in Hollywood, don't trust them. They have more than enough money to quit. They don't. What does that say? Anyway, back to this practical essay. Now, I will get all into evil celebrity wizards, but back to the practical science of discussing this this supreme self that we talk about when we talk about self and other. What is it? You exist within an arena that exists because you inhabit a vehicle that produces energy through the witnessing process. This is the essence of modern quantum physics and what is alluded to in various Hindu texts, particularly more contemporary conceptions of God through Sir Krishna rather than the philosophies of the Rig Vedas and Upanishads. What do I mean by that? I believe I've seen this once in the Vedas, but the Krishna-dominated texts will often talk about two birds, one witnessing another feeding and gaining nutrition from this process as both sit on the tree of life. In Norse mythology, this tree is called Yggdrasil. The various types of trees identified as being the Yggdrasil. But according to runology, it is the U, the rune Awas. The U produces a hallucinogenic pollen. So essentially, shaman and Odinic cultists, both of them who were consuming hallucinogenic mushrooms, by the way, compared reality to an evergreen tree that produces a hallucinogenic pollen. It's a lot to meditate upon. What do you think about that? An evergreen tree that produces hallucinogenic pollen as a metaphor for the Matrix that we experience. Very deep, very Maya. Here we go. Is pursuing sex or food or money actually important in the simulation or imagination? Is a creation process that more and more people, including credentialed scientists, say materializes matter? I would say it isn't. If anything, the accumulation of love, as in boundless energies, is the only thing that matters. And people who collect this love are gonna have more power. I mean, this is why the gods and Gaiden are very great. And maybe you can kind of think about Jesus Christ in this power concept too. I hope you guys can hear that part. So, as trippy as that part was, we're about to talk about the funky town metaphysics that I alluded to earlier. Because I'm essentially a conspiracy theorist who does field work, which basically means I go on hikes and paint crystals and sing a magical language used by Vikings and avoid skinwalkers. Now, talking about quantum mechanics and witnessing as being fundamental as first or primary, there's an issue with this. There are mythologies that talk about before consciousness. And it's important to stress this. Norse mythology does this. Odin, Vela, and V are three brothers who have carved apart Ymir, which is roaring sound, to create reality. Vela is an old word meaning will, and V is a type of shrine. So they're saying a magical ritual carved Ymir apart, roaring sound, also known as Om, of the being of consciousness, Odin, to form the world. But, there are things going on before Odin. The pinnacle of consciousness created reality. The dwarves are maggots crawling on the back of Ymir. What are the dwarves? They are beings that govern the nature and shape of forms. So they're defining forces, very Saturnarian. So the best way to understand reality pre-consciousness is like a fantasy sport. You're merely looking at data and having the data interact while viewing the data rather than the image, particularly in the 3D format flowing through linear time. Now, this is a 3D format flowing through linear time. You know, before consciousness, it would have been like Dwarf Fortress. Something to think about. That was new. That's not even the script. I'm just ad-libbing. This is. Yeah, I'm pretty good at speaking publicly. I like it. It's fun. I wonder if this is part of why the kami are how they are as disembodied intelligence is. Because this pre-consciousness set of rules for reality didn't suddenly stop being because we now have an additional form of experience layering over things, like consciousness, or under it. It makes me think about the wider riot deck, the aces in that deck, also known as fairy gifts, where a hand with either a wand, a cup, a sword, or a pentacle is popping into being out of a cloud. Another thing to think about. Really makes me want to get into that tarot deck variant again, so I can meditate on its allegedly flawed / limited symbolism. But how limited is this, symbolism allegedly supposed to be when it's alluding to something as powerful and important as pre-consciousness physics? What are we missing? The questions of our time. What are we missing from this Kali Yuga? Anyway, don't really have much to say about that other than just talking about the Rider-Waite deck. Let us move on. So far I've discussed how reality seems to be existing with the rules of epoch of being when consciousness and time did not exist. So instead of things appearing as cinematic motions proceeding through linear time, it was like stat sheets and fantasy sports interacting with one another. I'm sure this reality was something experienced, but it was real and required some other form of foundational energy to power itself. I can't really comment on this too much, as the whole proof of pre-conscious epoch of being is new to me, though I had thought of it normatively before. This recent revelation about kami metaphysics. Perhaps this next segment is related, though I do not have a teleological flow from that topic into this one. The first thing in Norse mythology is something called Grundagap, which is essentially a negative space full of all these loose particles of magical energy of limited potentiality. This is what I like to call off the top of my head, but what I've read about this Grundagap. Grundagap is also associated with the rune Gebo, which is shaped like an X, which kind of makes sense if we were to depict a giant abyss of unlimited creative potential, just something spreading out. And the form, because 4 is the basic shape number you need to have a 3D shape triangle. These are my socks. They got holes in them like a good necromancer socks. They got skulls in them. And there's a little rune staff here from the Anglo-Saxon tradition. I'm not sure you can see it, but it looks like a little box. but basically it's like Odin's spears or something. I don't do the Anglo-Saxon one. I just don't care. But this rune, this logo, has to do with sacrifice. So it's really cool. It's on my feet. It's got skulls. And it's kind of torn up. You can see my toes. No, they don't go all the way up my legs. Giant X of Gebo, which makes sense if we're depicting a giant abyss of unlimited creative potential, where expressions of love create the most potent energies. At some point between here and Gudrunargap, the realms of fire and ice from Muspelheim and Niflheim forming and intermixing and creating many things. We get to Ymar being carved up to make conscious reality, because Ymar is actually the smaller thing in the center of Gudrunargap, where the realms of fire and ice, of just forces, powerful primordial forces, are spinning at opposite areas. Gudrunargap. It mixed together. Kind of makes sense, if you're into a kind of like flat Earth or ice cap Earth or something like that. Earth being a little space between these forces on a flat plane or something. But I don't know. Maybe space is real. Maybe space is not. But that's not where we're going. Got distracted. Yeah, but in the center of this big space, we get to the little Ymar being carved up to make conscious reality. Yeah. Odin did it somehow. Maybe that's another explanation for things. Well, that god, Gaiden, did it somehow. And, here we are. So, there we go. Sometimes metaphysics answers are like that. I mean, it's valid. Now, I'm going to recall my short essay on all potentiality, which I kind of alluded to shortly when I said Gudrunargap is magical energy of unlimited potentiality. But what is all potentiality? All potentiality, to me, is describing how the Matrix and the narration enable itself. In many ways, in certain Hermetic texts, they'll talk about Om, O-O-M, as the A-U-M. And this is the Brahman, Vishnu, and Shiva. But they'll also talk about the silence that is not the Om, and that this is even bigger than the Om. How the Matrix and narration enable itself, and all potentiality, in many ways, is describing this silent contrast to Om. AUM, which I think has some various other correspondences and names. And I'm sure if you're interested, you can look them up. I don't know enough about it, but it's familiar. And I gotta finish this up. Still got a bit to read. But I think I cut some out later. Yeah, so all potentiality is a way that I came up with describing how the matrix and narration enable itself. I'm not the first one to come up with this. When I'm talking to you, calling it all potentiality, naming it a little better than some guy read it about in some hermetic book. Usually through the creative and productive processes, but eventually this causes stasis and stagnation, and thus destruction is inevitable and even desirable. This process of all potentiality, being literally everything, is limited by linear time, but all potentiality is fulfilled through other wheels of time being filled and new time restarted. Eventually, all of this has to neutralize into nothingness. All potentiality is largely my idea built off things I've read over the years. The nothingness and multiple wheels of time, recording stuff, is from things other people have come up with before me, and I'm like, oh, the pieces fit together. And it's the steeple full of people. Enough of that. That was something created on the spot. It was kind of a little humor for the ladies. The witches. My apologies, ladies. But I did call you ladies, so. Now on to talking about quantum mechanics and what scientists are saying about that. So we're going to talk about some boring real stuff now. Oh, God. And how this relates to whatever this guy laying down all comfy is trying to convince you of. As we uncover more about quantum mechanics and the collective understanding of what is primary first in relationship to this 3D matrix of atoms that was witnessing, from Aristotle to various Hindu texts of understanding, this process of witnessing being fundamental to as the modern scientists are articulating through their experiments is in sync with the elders' accounts. This visual process we experience is somehow tied with the manifestation of the 3D environment. The implications of this is that we can manifest and imagine 3D forms. Somehow. The energy is there to do it. The human body produces over 500 trillion volts of electricity between all the cells. So that energy is there. If you're familiar with the Kybalion, they talk about this principle of mentality, and they talk about mental transmutation. There's, unfortunately, people don't like me citing New Age texts and concepts, but there's something called the violet flame. It is a hermetic key. It is the tool by which perfect transmutation happens. It is the equation in E equals mc squared. It is literally a purple Kenaz, the rune Kenaz, the color purple. This is the violet flame. It sounds kind of lame,
if you have like pre-existing bias about things you've heard, but I think there's literally been a psyop against the color purple magic. That is my opinion. But, you know, use the purple cannas and tell me what you think about that. And then be like, is there really a psyop against purple magic when I think about how powerful the purple cannas is? And people would want to be distracting from that. Just food for thought. If human brains can work via cloud computing, sharing memories in a collective unconscious, I imagine that excessive voltage can be shaved off each cell or specific cells to form meaningful energy projection. I don't know any other means for the energy to have performed certain operations I have seen. Because I've seen stuff. So what does 500 trillion volts means in terms of E equals mc squared? What about 1 million? What about 100 million volts from bone cells? Is dance and mudra other apt means of projecting and releasing such massive levels of energies? These are questions we must ask ourselves. You know, Glidden Kali literally does a vampiric dance to kill a regenerating pig demon. You know, pedophiles are nothing more than regenerating pig monsters. If you get the hint. Regarding these 500 trillion volts of energy, you know, what can be done with this? I've talked about the spontaneous generation of a swarm of caterpillars via the usage of a wand with rune song before. Let's think about how much electricity is necessary to generate such, with transmutation itself being part of the rules of reality, and the perfect tool of transmutation exists for people easily if they just have pure hearts. I mean, part of the reason why it's like the matrix of Jesus Christ is so obvious is like, it's like, oh yeah, all these things are available to you if your heart is pure enough. Like the purple cannas. Like, you're not gonna get it if you're not really pure enough of heart. So, you know, people are gonna, you know, talk shit, but they're demons. Not even the repenting kind. But yeah, how much electricity, if you know, would be necessary to materialize into like a swarm of caterpillars, or like something else? I don't know, like Manticore. Who knows? I don't know, but I think we could figure these things out. That's where I'm at. Like, I'm gonna make a big meme about like, here you are, and about like things I've accomplished already, magically, and where I'm going. And like, I'm already at like, I know dragons are real, and so are monster girls, and you know, weaponized defense and magic's real. And like, so like, where are we gonna go from here, folks? Sooner or later, we're gonna figure out how to fly. Many niggas in trouble. Oh, you should be seeing the script. It seems cooler when think I'm doing an Obama and just memorizing it from heart. So, the existence of this potential battery of energy that can obviously be trained, and we have to train it, and it takes time, you know, that might be the real big limitation. If any limitation exists, the training of the battery. But what can be done? Will we be shooting fireballs and force lightning from our hands, or like deadly vibes of various colors, or maybe both? I think the latter is going to be more available to us first, because when I first was trying to experiment with this recording, and there's been multiple attempts of this, I saw energy. I could see the darkened space projected between my hands. And I've been working on improving my vision with enchantments, but it's slight progress. I don't think the energy I specifically used was my heart chakras, so it wasn't even really probably even very offensive. I can only project a little bit of heat from my hands. We'll just find specialists. I'll give them my tools, and then they can put the energy into them. Why train to punch really hard when you've got bows and arrows and AR-15s? Or wands and swords and cups. Can't forget those cups. So, where do we go from this base idea of where we are, functionally speaking, in relationship to reality, based on kind of all this stuff? Like I've kind of alluded to between mainstream science and then being like, oh yeah, here's a fun fact about the human body being a power plant. When we know all these things are possible, some people want to be guru, but I'm not here to advocate being guru. I'm a warlock. I'm gonna tell you to be figure out less, not, I don't want to say less beautiful, but their beauty's more nuanced forms of identity. Some people are going to be clerics, some people are going to be healers, some people are going to be, warlocks. I make enchantments and specialize in familiar research, working with familiars and spirits and stuff. Some people are going to be temple prostitute healers. And some people might be like, that's not very trad. And it's if we're going to return to nothingness and negate karma, we're going to have to heal sexual traumas. And this Kali Yuga is better than the other ones. So, if you have a problem with, me supporting temple prostitution and that premise, maybe you don't understand what's trad. Ridiculous. Oh, I'm on Tiffy. Oh, so now we're going to talk about some really sketch shit. So far I've discussed the evolving nature of reality, how it's more complex, and how our bodies are engines that maintain the current manifestation of reality as a 3D environment experiencing linear time. I will now discuss the societal implications of these things, as well as talk about how you, the viewer, can begin to adjust to this new yet not too unfamiliar perspective I'm about to unveil. Where to begin? I'm a skeptical person. The reality of magic and the lack of mainstream recognition for this art and science makes me not like society. People who administer it, people who do research for it, and enforce its cultural dogma. I can go off on conspiracy theories about what do we really know, and if and what and where timeline resets, whatever that means. And if you want that, you'll have to get the book when it comes out. This channel is about magic, performing it. In short, if you go far down that rabbit hole, you'll realize the history is so fabricated. You'll have to either become depressed or believe in yourself during this Kali Yuga. I hope you swim, of course. This channel is about positivity and encouraging self-realization. I mean, it's important to have guru moments, but let's learn about other things. What else we could be. Society itself is largely ignorant of these things, even in times when magic was commonplace. It was like any other specialized craft, esoteric to the uninitiated. High-level mathematics and computer programming is obscure to the average, and even gifted yet non-initiated mind. Do you really think that if we cannot even fully comprehend the mysteries, why should the peasants? Should they even? Should we? We're the priests. There are two kinds of knowledge. That for the priests and that for everyone else. That being said, that does not mean we wielders cannot return to our traditional rank within the hierarchy, where scientists and mundane doctors being put in their appropriate caste while actors are placed lower than individuals engaged in temple prostitution. The purpose of society depends on who you ask. If you're a Westerner based off the last 500 years of intellectual thought, the purpose of the society is to facilitate the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness and or property. If you ask non-secular societies, they will say the purpose of society is to facilitate order along the lines of providing the spiritual needs and elevate the people into a higher state of being. While we can debate how effective the Catholic Church has been over the centuries, this was essentially their stated objective. Ancient Egypt was very much like this. They believed that the good government facilitated this, the pharaoh being the head priest, much like the Pontifex, another title for the Pope, but also an ancient title for the Roman ruler. Pontifex meaning bridge between the worlds. So outside of the Enlightenment delusion, the vast majority of human history had specific ways of viewing the world that we're only now returning to with embarrassment that we somehow convinced ourselves we were smarter than our elders. So how does this current global paradigm feel about things? They openly mock us with various levels of humiliation rituals. This exists at so many levels, it's mind-boggling. It'll make you mentally ill. They want us to make us mentally ill. They create culture that's plagiarized off our lives, and it's designed to trigger people, so they go into mass shootings. They do this. They do this and more. You have no idea how deep it goes. And honestly, you shouldn't spend that much time thinking about it, because it's like maddening. And they want you to do that. They want you to go mentally ill. Fuck that. Learn magic. That will make you less mentally ill than studying, bullshit about Sandy Hook. Adam Lanza isn't even a real image of a person. It's all made up. Don't even think about his image. It sends shivers down my spine. Issa. doing banishments. If you want to learn about those humiliation rituals, you can Google that. Well, don't use Google. That's part of the enemy. But there's other search engines. In regards to magic, I will tell you about the dangers. Process of witnessing, known as Darsana, D-A-R-S-A-N-A, is exploited by the cults within Hollywood. They have access to all the data and how popular particular artists are, and this influences their status within subgroups within the greater cult hierarchy. They know the ancient cults they belong to through advanced astrology data given to them by all the telescope sites all over the world, including the one at the Vatican. So, yes, they spy on you completely. They know everything. It's not just wiretaps. These cults gain power from raw numbers of witnesses, but also special witnesses who are great souls, gods, Guiden, other notables. Getting such souls to like your content elevates one within the world of Hollywood witness cults. I bring this up because it really demonstrates how entrenched the occupation is. How much they already are down to keep you in your place and them in theirs. The only thing up for debate is how big is the factory farm? Is it just this planet, or is it more? Is it more? What should one do? Well, hopefully you're still pursuing magic and watching this video, because I don't really have an answer other than you can pursue your own self-development and research. Hopefully, we can overpower the occupiers with our alternative means of power. Christ has given us a template for how to rebel. And in a Kali Yuga such as ours, it won't be hard to disrupt authorities by performing healing miracles and such. All my advice is that you believe. You believe. Blah, 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 blah. So what about your self-realization? Leah Wendell says there are 4 major incarnations we have. I believe Carl Jung's analysis of the anima and animus does a good job at categorizing and differentiating their differing aspects. The stages are as follows. For men, they experience the anima, the subconscious personified as the female. The stages are Eve, Helen, Mary, and Sophia. For women, they experience the animus, the subconscious is a man of physical power, a man of romance or action, a man as professor, clergy, or politician, and man as a spiritual guide. How the 3rd and 4th stages are distinct, I cannot speculate. I'm only at stage 2. What I can speculate from my research is there's a lot of niche socioeconomic roles to be fulfilled by wielders. And I'm here to be your angel investor. So, this is Black Pope Vice signing out. Blessings to y'all.